The corridor lights of the Imperial dreadnought flickered as Commander Lyra Vance stepped over the rubble of what had once been a thriving colony world. Smoke still curled from the devastated structures, and the acrid smell of burning plasma filled her nostrils. Her squad moved behind her in tight formation, weapons raised, scanning for survivors or threats. The war with the Skreth had been brutal. These apex predators had terrorized the outer systems for decades, their reputation built on mountains of corpses and shattered civilizations. They took no prisoners, they showed no mercy, and they never ever retreated. That's why when Vance heard the sound, her blood ran cold. A whimper, soft, pitiful, and utterly out of place on this world of death. "Commander, we should move," Lieutenant Harris urged, his voice tight with tension. "Intel says Skreth reinforcements could arrive any—" "Quiet," Vance interrupted, tilting her head. There it was again. Coming from beneath a collapsed dwelling. Against every regulation, against every survival instinct her 20 years of service had drilled into her, Vance approached the rubble. Her squad exchanged nervous glances but followed. They trusted her even when she seemed to have lost her mind. She pulled away chunks of debris with her armored gloves, and then she saw it. A Skreth cub, no larger than a human child, covered in silver-gray fur matted with dust and dried blood. Its large amber eyes blinked up at her with a confusion that transcended species. One of its hind legs was trapped beneath a support beam. "Step back, Commander," Harris said, raising his plasma rifle. "I'll make it quick." "No." The word came out harder than Vance intended. She knelt beside the creature, assessing its injuries. The cub didn't snarl or snap at her. It simply watched, trembling. "Commander, that's a Skreth. Do you know what they did to the colonists here? To our people on Meridian 7? They're monsters." Vance looked at the cub again, at its frightened eyes, at the way it had curled its small body into itself, trying to appear smaller, less threatening. "This one's just a child," she said quietly. "It didn't choose this war." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Vance made her decision. She lifted the beam with enhanced strength from her armor and carefully extracted the injured cub. It made a small sound, something between a whine and a chirp, and didn't resist as she wrapped it in an emergency thermal blanket. "You're really doing this," Harris said, disbelief coloring every word. "I'm really doing this," Vance confirmed, cradling the bundle against her chest. "Log it however you want. Court-martial me if you have to. But I'm not leaving a child to die alone in the rubble." The Empire was not pleased. Commander Vance faced a tribunal that lasted 3 days. Officers argued that she had endangered her mission, violated protocol, and shown sympathy to an enemy combatant. The holovids showed the Skreth's atrocities on loop. Dozens of worlds razed, millions dead. But Vance stood her ground. "We fight to protect the innocent," she said, her voice unwavering. "If we become the kind of people who kill children, then we've already lost. We've become what we're fighting against. In the end, they couldn't court-martial her. Public opinion, swayed by images of the human officer protecting the small alien cub, wouldn't allow it. Instead, they gave her a choice. Euthanize the Skreth or take full responsibility for it. She named him Kale. The years that followed were unlike anything the Empire had witnessed. Vance raised Kale on her personal ship, the Horizon's Edge, teaching him human languages, customs, and values. The cub who had once trembled in the rubble grew into a magnificent specimen of his species. Standing nearly 7 feet tall with razor-sharp claws and a predator's instincts. But Kale was different from any Skreth the galaxy had ever known. He learned strategy from Vance's tactical manuals. He studied philosophy, ethics, and history. He watched with fascination as humans debated, laughed, and showed compassion to one another. And slowly, impossibly, he began to understand what his own species had never grasped. That strength without honor was just savagery. "Why did you save me?" Kale asked one night, his voice a deep rumble that still carried traces of his species' natural growl. He was 14 in human years now, fully grown by Skreth standards. Vance looked up from her datapad, meeting those amber eyes that had haunted her dreams for years. "Because someone had to prove that mercy isn't weakness," she said simply. "Because I believed you deserved a chance to choose who you'd become." "My people would have killed me for being weak," Kyle said, his clawed hand flexing unconsciously. "For being raised by humans, for caring about things beyond the hunt." "Then your people were wrong," Vance replied. "And maybe you can teach them that." The opportunity came sooner than either expected. When a Skreth war fleet attacked the colony world of New Kyoto, Kyle requested permission to address the enemy commander. The Empire was skeptical, but Vance vouched for him. Kale stood on the communication deck, his imposing form filling the holographic display. The Skreth war leader, Supreme Fang Rexar, snarled at the sight of him. "You reek of humans, traitor," Rexar spat. "You are no Skreth." "No," Kale agreed, his voice calm. "I am something new. I am Skreth who has learned that survival isn't just about conquest. It's about adaptation, cooperation, and building something that lasts beyond the next battle." Rexar laughed, a horrible rasping sound. "Weak philosophy from a pet." "Then let me show you strength," Cal replied. He transmitted coordinates. "Meet me on the surface. Single combat. If I win, you withdraw your fleet and agree to negotiations. If you win, you get Commander Vance and the colony both." The duel lasted 17 minutes. Kale fought with all the ferocity of his species, but tempered with discipline and strategy Vance had taught him. When he stood over Rexar's defeated form, he made a choice that echoed across the Empire. He offered his hand to help his opponent up. "We don't have to be monsters," Kyle said. "We can be more." Rexar stared at that extended hand for a long moment. Then slowly he took it. The war didn't end that day. But it changed. More Skreth began to question. More began to listen. And at the center of it all was the story that every species in the Empire whispered with awe. The human who had shown mercy to a predator cub, and the warrior that cub became. Commander Lyra Vance stood on the observation deck of the Horizon's Edge, watching as the first joint human-Skreth diplomatic mission departed for neutral space. Kale stood beside her, no longer the frightened cub she'd pulled from the rubble, but not entirely the fearsome predator he'd been born to become either. He was something the galaxy had never seen, proof that compassion could transform even the most unlikely souls. "Thank you," Kale said quietly, "for seeing what I could be instead of what I was supposed to be." Vance smiled, her eyes glistening. "Thank you for proving me right, and across the Empire." In 1,000 languages and 1,000,000 conversations, beings of all species continued to whisper the story of the human who raised a predator and changed the course of history with a single act of mercy.